This video is brought to you by Squarespace. This is my current nearly full sketchbook.
Whoa, no spoilers. That's for later.
A lot of people tend to put cute stickers on the front of their sketchbooks or label it with their name or the year they completed it in, but I like to paint all over the covers of mine with an increasingly ridiculous amount of detail.
I hate minimalism. That's not my vibe.
But what should I paint on the cover of this? That's the question. There are almost too many possibilities.
So I decided to narrow down those possibilities by asking my Instagram audience, which definitely helped narrow things down.
Like, it for sure narrowed everything down. So I really like the concept that I did on last year's sketchbook. I basically did a little painting collage of a bunch of little things that were prevalent in my art at the time, and I think I want to do something similar on this sketchbook, but escalate the amount of detail because I have a tendency to escalate every single little thing that I do.
Of course, to do this, I don't trust myself going straight into the cover and sketching on it, so I decided to do a little thumbnail layout in Procreate first, and I'm glad I did because you can definitely see my ideas were totally all over the place. But after a couple of tries of pondering as to how I could make this cover entirely too much, I eventually got a layout that I thought was fun and weird and reflected where my art is currently focused right now.
So now I need to sketch this out, but I can't sketch on a surface this dark, so... Before I get to blocking in a bunch of paint, allow me to distract you with pretty girls in bright colors. Pretty girls in bright colors that are hosted by this video sponsor, Squarespace. I've spoken many times on the channel about how much I love Squarespace, and I have made it no secret that I like them because I am lazy. A lot of other website builders offer a very hands-on approach to building websites, and by that I mean ones and zeros, beep boop robot nonsense. I'm an artist, okay? Do I look like Livingston Dell from the 2001 film Ocean's 11 to you? Squarespace is not like the other girls. They have it all, from website building and portfolio hosting to e-commerce to marketing and analytics. And what's more, they allow you to do all of this in an actually easy and accessible way. I love that Squarespace allowed me to get started with a professionally designed, fully customizable website template that allowed me to focus on the bells and whistles like text, colors, and the formatting of my portfolio. And the ease of customization doesn't end there, because Squarespace's intuitive drag-and-drop website builder fluid engine then allowed me to go in and add all of the necessary media that I wanted to my front page. I could use social blocks to add my Instagram gallery so that people can see what I'm up to over there. I can use video blocks to add different YouTube videos that I want to feature on my main page. And I am also a seller of goods, merchandise, and for that, Squarespace has an e-commerce platform that I can feature right alongside my portfolio website, which is extra convenient because I am someone who has art on my portfolio that I would like to then entice users to click one button and buy from my store. And could you guess that Squarespace also makes that part of the process easy because they allow me to link my print-on-demand service directly to my Squarespace store, so I don't really have to do anything. And granted, my store does fall on the more casual side, but if you are a more serious e-commerce seller, Squarespace has every tool that you could possibly need, from product options to shipping options to ways to keep track of who is interested in your products through their very thorough website analytics. So if you are interested in building your own portfolio or website, you can head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch your website, you can head to squarespace.com/PricklyAlpaca to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you so much to Squarespace for conspiring with me again on this video. Now let's get back to it.
So obviously I started out this little painting by blocking in a bunch of colors based on the thumbnail that I did, and I'm so glad that I did a thumbnail for this illustration because as you can see, the colors that I had in mind are pretty complicated. There's a lot happening at once. So as was the case with the sketchbook painting that I did last year, this was also super helpful. Highly recommend to plan out things and paintings. I know that it can be a difficult principle to grasp for those of us who like to be artistically spontaneous, but it really is quite helpful, and it's a lesson that I am slowly learning myself. Anyways, while I do this, I want to talk about a bunch of different stuff, especially where I am artistically at the moment, because I've had a year where I've focused a lot on creating physical projects, costumes, sewing, sculpting, basically so many things besides doing visual art. So now that I have been focusing a lot more on visual art this past month, I want to talk about art block and burnout and not practicing nearly enough and that sort of thing. But before I get into the juice of it, I should probably tell you what is going on the cover of the sketchbook and why I chose the little motifs that I chose for this painting, because to the naked eye, I'm sure this looks like pure chaos, and you're not wrong, but it is my particular brand of organized chaos. So on the right side of the cover, the part that you'll see whenever the sketchbook is actually closed, in the middle I have a Luna moth. It doesn't get much deeper than the fact that I just really like Luna moths, and also moths have, taken over my channel a number of times this year, so it only seemed natural that they should also take over the front of my sketchbook in some way. Other than that, I've got a sun, some celestial motifs. That's also been something super popular in my art this past year and just forever in general. Alongside that, we have an eyeball with some fire coming out of it. That is a reference to my character Quintessa, who is like a fire user. If you could see in the thumbnail, I was trying to sketch out like a headshot of her or maybe even a full-bodied pose, and I just wasn't able to make it work in the way that I wanted, but she's still one of my main characters, so I wanted to reference her on the cover because she's like all over this sketchbook. She's kind of my comfort character that I draw whenever I don't know what else to draw, or if I'm doing studies and I just want it to be an OC in the end rather than just a random person that I'm studying. And relating back to how I referenced, asking what I should paint on the cover of this on Instagram at the beginning of this video, I didn't take suggestions directly. I more so just used it as a general source of inspiration to try to come up with ideas. So some of these are loose references, like I got some suggestions for OCs. Someone said that I should paint my cat, the executive producer, on the front. Someone said moths. I'm sure that someone said like mushrooms, cryptids, I don't know. A bunch of these are like loose suggestions based on that. So on that note, someone else said that I should do a self-portrait on the front. So on the left side, the little headshot is just a fun little stylized self-portrait just for the heck of it. In that portrait, I've also got my little round red glasses, which are part of my channel iconography, and also some coffee, which is, the elixir that this channel would not happen without, so I also felt that that deserved to be on the front cover. And then at the very bottom is just a little portrait of my character Rose Thornblade doing, just nightcore things, floating very dramatically on her back in a pond surrounded by lily pads. Ladies with swords continue to be a main focal point in my artwork, so I thought that one deserved to be on the cover of this. And then branching over to the back cover of the sketchbook, I've just got a little snake just slithering across both pages. There's really not a deeper reason behind this other than the fact that I like snakes. They're cool, and I thought that it would have been like a cool little guy to add to the composition. And I've also got some flowers around the snake, just, for funsies. And then at the bottom of that page, I have a little interpretation of the executive producer, which definitely turns into something fun by the end of this painting, and I'll probably touch on it a little bit more there. I've got some little bioluminescent mushrooms on the bottom left-hand side of that page, and the rest of this back cover is devoted to a little concept art that I've had in my head for a while of a totally theoretical comic, but it's the one relating to my character Orchid, and this is just depicting her using her flame abilities against a very spooky looming deer or elk book-looking creature. This is like the physical manifestation of the main villain from this comic, and I like to jokingly call this physical form that he has a Helk, because my sense of humor is stupid. These all may seem like very random choices to put on the cover of a sketchbook, and as a painting, it seems just completely... none of this goes together. None of it really works, but since it's a sketchbook, that's how a lot of my spreads end up anyways, and I love painting in my sketchbooks. I love having really kind of finished, polished art right next to art that is just sketchy and rough. So I really thought this fit the spirit of this sketchbook. That's one of the main reasons why I like to paint on the cover of my sketchbooks, because I can kind of condense everything that I was really into that year onto the cover and have something that's really thematic. And I can look back on it and be like, oh, that's what I was drawing. That's what my art style was like. Since it takes me an entire year to finish a sketchbook most of the time, it's just a nice way to document things. And the other reason why I wanted to put a nice painting on the cover of this is that this is actually a thinner sketchbook than I normally work in terms of the number of pages, because it is a multimedia sketchbook intended for, you know, watercolors, acrylics, gouache, all that sort of thing. It can even take alcohol markers to a certain extent, and despite that fact, I have really not done many paintings or marker illustrations in this at all. There's like a couple of things here and there, but honestly, there's just a lot of ballpoint pen studies and like messy stuff. And I feel bad because this sketchbook actually has nice paper that can take finished art. So a nice cover that's painted like this is sort of like encouragement for me to actually go in and like do a couple more paintings and maybe paint over my sketches before I actually show this to you guys in a sketchbook tour. And obviously a sketchbook can just be messy and sketchy. It doesn't have to have any finished art in it. This is just what I like to do with mine because, like I said, these take me a while because I do a lot of other things besides visual art and I want them to look pretty. So on that note, I feel like it just took me a while to explain the very basics of what I'm painting and why. So sorry about that. I'm not feeling like the most concise this evening, so be prepared for even more rambles. So as I just mentioned, I actually didn't do a ton of visual art this year in general. I think the main visual art that I focused on the channel was obviously like my little character design videos because I know that everyone really likes those. I also really love making them. But my content has really shifted a lot towards making physical art and items. If you're new here, I don't know why you would be, but if you are, I do a lot of costuming and cosplay and sewing, and I have gotten into sculpting and other things that I don't even remember. But I've done so much of that this year that I have not been focusing as much on visual art and therefore have focused barely at all on my sketchbook. I've had very little time to do so, because in the past, on weeks where I was doing art-focused videos, I would usually start off each morning with little warm-ups in a sketchbook, and I would just do that consistently, and even though I didn't get to do it a ton over the course of a year, it would definitely fill up a sketchbook. But whenever you're working on a physical project and trying to get it done in a week, time is like really of the essence, so I didn't set aside time to like sketchbook as much this year. So I feel like a lot of the stuff in the sketchbook has actually been completed within the last like 2 months or something like that. There's definitely some stuff in here from like the beginning of the year, and then there was a huge drop off, I guess around May, and then I didn't really pick it back up until like November. That being said, I have been art blocked mostly because I'm just extremely rusty right now. I have spoken about it a number of times on the channel, but you really have to do a lot of upkeep whenever you're like a working artist and you do a lot of things from memory. Like obviously it's great to use reference where you can, but sometimes it's just not worth it to go scour the internet for some hyper specific pose or whatever. Like I draw a lot of the stuff that I draw for clients, for character design videos, for all that, just like off the top of my head. So you want to make sure that your visual library is well stocked, and to do that you have to do a lot of studies and practice and keep everything fresh, which is something that I also didn't keep up with during the many months whenever I was very focused on, you know, costuming and making physical items. So now that I'm kind of back into the swing of things with my sketchbook, I have been doing way more studies and trying to actually draw from reference, which is super good. I think that that has helped me to snap out of this art block pretty quickly. So I would say that I'm not feeling particularly art blocked anymore, but I am still very burned out, which is not surprising because I was actually looking back at my YouTube history a couple of weeks back, and I counted up the number of videos that I made this year, and I think it's approaching something crazy like 48, which means that I uploaded almost every single week, and most of the time that was a full project where I was making an item. So a corset or a weird lamp or a character design video. And as I've been wondering, man, I'm just like feeling real exhausted. Not a lot of good ideas are coming to me. There was a moment of clarity whenever I realized like, oh, that's why. I've just been going nonstop for a little bit too long here. So I need to pump the brakes and maybe plug myself into the charger for a little bit. And honestly, this is a really good time to be almost done with the sketchbook, because lately all I have wanted to do was sketch and paint and do little experimental pieces in my sketchbook. I've been literally having so much fun. And I've also been getting a lot of comments from people who miss sketchbook content. So here we go. Our views are aligned for the time being. So I am going to be giving you guys at least slightly more sketchbook content until I finish this up. I might try to record some of the stuff that I do in the sketchbook as I finish it up, like little paintings and stuff like that. I have really been wanting to put some extra video content on Patreon because they have all been so very patient with me these last couple of months while I have been absolutely throwing down on the main channel and posting over there a little bit late sometimes. So I will most likely do that with some of the little paintings and other things that I do. But I'm still trying to come up with other ideas of cool things to fill this sketchbook with that aren't just like little pose studies. I've talked about it on the channel in the past, but one of my like pipe dream goals is to create a comic at some point, and at this point I'm thinking a one-shot of some kind is attainable for me in some way. But in order to do that, I feel like I really need to improve some of my posing and draftsmanship and composition and all that sort of thing. Like, I also really could just be a whole heck of a lot faster because I am not a speedy artist. It takes me kind of forever to do anything, and some of that is because I don't practice enough. And don't even get me started on laying out comic panels and like making a page read in a good way. That is like its own talent and skill that I do not know the first thing about. But because of that, I have been doing a ton of like little action pose figure drawings and studies, and a lot of them I have just been kind of making little finished doodles of my characters, particularly Quintessa. There's a lot of action poses of her in there, which I have had so much fun doing, but there's so much of that I want some other fun things and more variation in the sketchbook. Again, this is just a me thing and how I treat it. I like to have color and little finished doodles and pieces alongside the sketchier stuff. So, what are some of y'all's favorite exercises to do in a sketchbook that results in like slightly more finished art, or at the very least very colorful art? What are some weird things that I can draw to make it look all aesthetic? I do have a ton of little snippings and stickers and things in there to fill up space. I kind of also treated this like a scrapbook because I went on some trips this year, so I put a lot of little bits and pieces that I got on trips in there, so that does help fill it up a little bit. But I want some more art in there. Especially, I got some Posca pens recently, which I absolutely love, and I've been trying to figure out how to use them in a good way with my art style. So like, what are some things that you guys do? Because I'm nosy. I'm always trying to steal other people's little sketchbook techniques to use them in mine and become more powerful. Haha. One of my favorite things that I did in this sketchbook whenever I was bored and didn't know what to draw is I just looked up a character from a TV show or even like a real person, just like a nice face to do a study of, and on a sticky note, because it's a small enough piece of paper and surface area, I tried to draw it, you know, kind of in my style, but a little bit more realistically, like a true study. And then I would just put those all over my sketchbook wherever I had like free space. Slight spoiler, but I have an entire page in there of studies of characters from Buffy. And that might be one of my favorite pages of the entire sketchbook, because just the variants and faces that I was able to play with by picking like an ensemble cast from one show was really fun. I really want to do that with some other shows, so I'll have to figure out what else I want to do. But if you want to study more realistic faces, I highly recommend doing that, because since it's a small piece, it's like lower pressure, and also it's a sticky note, so if it doesn't turn out good, you can just throw it away or do something else with it. It's like it never happened if it turned out bad. I love it. And if it turns out good, you can cover some art that you don't like with a good drawing. I do that so much, all the time. It's also like a really good way to study likeness in a way that feels like cheating, because it's also fan art. Again, highly recommend. Getting onto a slightly different topic, I probably should be less of a perfectionist in my sketchbook sometimes though, because I do try to cover up everything that I don't really like and try to completely finish it. So I think that makes me not want to do as many like studies. You know, art that's just purely utilitarian and not necessarily supposed to look good, but supposed to help you improve. You know, with it being the end of the year and everything, I have been thinking a lot about like, oh, what my visual art goals and what my overall art goals are for next year. And I've been thinking a lot about what kind of sketchbooks I want to keep, and if I want to try to complete some on an accelerated schedule, just so that I am drawing at like a higher volume and that sort of thing. And I'm thinking I will probably start keeping like an ugly sketchbook, quote unquote, to do like faster studies and that sort of thing. If I'm being completely honest, I probably should have already had one of these. I know a lot of other professional artists keep these, aside from the sketchbook that's like their baby that they really like. So I will most likely start keeping one of these that's just like kind of a cheaper, crappy sketchbook that I don't care about as much, especially to warm up in, because that's not something that I do all the time, that I have started doing more consistently recently. And it helps so much. I'm impulsive, and sometimes I just like to jump right into whatever I'm working on, and I underestimate the positive impact that actually warming up can have on my art. So, like, I joked about it in my most recent character design video whenever I was like, oh, how do I hold a pen again? But like, that wasn't a joke. That happened to me. I picked up a pencil and it felt foreign in the palm of my hand. And I was like, what is going on? Like, I don't remember how to make the marks that I want to make, and I literally had to spend so long warming up that day to the point where I could like confidently draw the way I'm used to. So man, it's just gonna take a lot of discipline this next year to even out and balance all my areas of focus, because there's so many ways that I want to improve in visual art and sewing, and then specifically sculpting. And I think what we're learning here is I have too many pies in my oven right now, and it could catch on fire. But what if I just like pie? I can have more than one pie as a treat. I just need to figure out how to build an industrial-sized oven. You know what I'm saying? You probably don't. That makes literally no sense. But I do want to do a better job of keeping up with all of my areas of focus whenever it comes to art next year, especially visual art, because that does take so much maintenance. But anyways, that was a lot of rambling. Getting slightly back on track, we are nearing the end of the painting, so I do want to talk a little bit about it, even though we went on a giant tangent. So overall, I am extremely happy with how this came out. I did make a point not to overwork this painting. Normally, I probably would go in and add a little bit more detail, definitely make sure the sketch lines are gone and just sharpen everything up, but I was trying to treat this in more of a painterly way. I have been learning more genuine painting techniques rather than treating painting like I do digital art, where things have line art and they're rendered and it's like a very graphic style. But with this, I wanted to make sure the focal points were nice and sharp and had a good amount of detail, but then the areas where you don't really have to look there as much, I left them a little looser, just some brush strokes to, you know, describe the area, because that's how painting typically works. And I didn't think so at first, but looking back and comparing the two covers, I think that this is a pretty big improvement on the painting that I made on the cover of last year's sketchbook. It feels like the other one has a lot more detail, and I spent way longer working on it, but I feel like this came together as like a better looking painting, even though it is significantly more disjointed. I think because it is so disjointed as a composition, it works better. The colors I find personally to be very pleasing. I'm really happy with how those came out. And on top of all that, it took me a significantly shorter period of time to do this versus last year's painting. I worked on that one for, I think, multiple days because I was just a less experienced painter back then. I did work on this one for multiple days, but it was like a couple hours at a time here and there because I was like busy with other stuff. So definitely a much more casual, breezy piece to finish up. If I had one critique, it would be that for some reason I still can't draw moths. Like, do you see that moth? She's crooked. The art lean is really hitting. I don't know what happened, and I am ashamed. But the face looks good. I checked that in the mirror, and the art lean isn't so bad. So you win some, you ruin a moth some other times. That's life. But with that, our little sketchbook cover is done. Woo, yay! If only the full sketchbook was done too, that would be nicer. But the sketchbook tour for this should be my first video of 2024, so look forward to that. As my little holiday treat, I'm probably going to be spending a good amount of my break just painting over sketches and making it look pretty and presentable for you all. So I'm excited to finally post another sketchbook tour, and I know I'm sounding like this is my last video of the year. It's not. I still have one more video coming out after this, but then I will be going on a little 1 to 2 week break until the beginning of January to fully recharge. So look forward to that. I have no idea exactly what that video is going to be yet because I'm trying to figure out what kind of mood I'm in. I do kind of want to make it more festive so that I at least have one seasonal video coming out. We'll see. I have too many ideas as usual. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed seeing an actual sketchbook video for once. I know that many of you subscribed for that and you really haven't been getting much sustenance this year, but I will hopefully figure out a better way to balance that next year. I don't know. I have too many content niches on the channel. But as always, the biggest thank you for this video and every single one of my videos goes to my patrons and especially my executive producers. Sony, Crimson Moon 04, Rest Easy, Lirael, Liana, Armlar Jean, Anubix, Breeza, Elizabeth Smith, Bean the Bread, I Hang Out with Cats at Parties, Bobo McFo, Freya Wolf, Gravity Drop, Sweet Winter Garden, Katie, Hypnos, India Gloom, Enozine, Megan Penland, Meeks Hunter, Eloquent Silence, Lovisa, Thea Maia, Agent.Sketchy, The Cat's Bark, Alwyn Hayes, Shay Lee, Zyle S, Dodo, Cat, Small_Creeper, Francesca Sliwa, Freedom and Gus Gus, Sama Lama Ding Dong, Rose Kofrick, Rose Jacani, Phoenix, Brian, The Cat Buses Early, and Miss Wicked. And as we end out this video, this executive producer is here to encourage you to subscribe. Do you hear me? There's a cat on screen who would like you to subscribe. I think you know what the right thing to do is. Bye.